Here is something that I think is such a fun project. I had to dig around a bit to find things because after all we want to be doing stuff we can find in our house. I'm probably not like the rest and I have a lot of extra equipment. But I found an old juice jar and I think they make the best terrariums. And instead of standing it up, which you can do, I'm going to lay it on its side just because. And at this moment in time, I'm taking the lid off of it. So what I want to do is first talk about the ingredients. So we've got gravel, little fine gravel, and that goes on the bottom because that's for the drainage. And then we have horticultural or really fine charcoal. If you don't have this, aquarium charcoal will do just fine. And then I've got an all-purpose potting mix, just a really lightweight, which I've pre-moistened a bit so that it can be all set to go. The most important part of this whole thing is the plant material. So this terrarium isn't very big, so I'm only going to put 2 plants in. So I really like the Moon Valley, which is a pilea. I thought it was very dramatic and very bold, and it will not mind this environment. And then I kind of was looking at this ground cover, which is called a nerve plant. And this is a miniature nerve plant. The Latin for the family is Fittonia, which is really neat. But I really, really want to grow this fern, and this is a Dryopteris. So I decided that the Moon Valley and the Dryopteris should go together, because this one's kind of like a dinosaur, and this one's kind of like the moon. So I'm going to put them together. Now, some of the tools that you may want to look around for, because you probably don't have a lot of things that will fit in here, my hand fits in here. So sometimes that would be a good thing to check, that your hand fits. I have all sorts of really valuable equipment, like a pair of chopsticks, because it helps to hold the plant up. And I have 2 sizes of spoons. I have my soup spoon and I have a teaspoon, because you got to use them like shovels. And you will see eventually that I'm going to use the paintbrush. So those are just the things that I dug out of the garage that I thought were really good. Now, the first part of this little trick is to deal with the gravel, because we want to get the gravel on the bottom. And by getting just enough weight of gravel in the bottom, we'll be able to stabilize the terrarium somewhat. And I don't want a whole lot, I just want enough to give it some good drainage and get it to go down in. And this is just a fine, coarse gravel with no additives, and I rinse it through to make sure there's no dust in it. And then what I like to do is, even though I'm using my hands, I take my spoon and I just lightly flatten it in. Now the next thing we have to add is the charcoal. Now the charcoal is important because it aerates the soil and keeps it from going stagnant, because there's no air circulation. If you're planting any pots that don't have drainage holes, charcoal is really important. And I sprinkle it. I want to sprinkle it around. And you're probably going to go about 1/4 of this thing, because at the end we'll add a bit more. So that's lots. Now we have to get the soil inside the jar. But I found a little scoop in my kitchen drawer. It's a good thing I don't have anybody that tells me I can't do this. But what I want to do, just like you put in a load of soil in the garden, I'm pushing the soil in with my hand. And so now it's all piled up at the top end. So this is where you take your soup spoon and you just start filling it in. And you start just filling in. We might need a bit more, but first we'll add the plants before we decide. So I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to take my spoon and I'm going to shovel it all to the back. So the first one I want to put in is the little fern, the Dryopteris. I still say that sounds like a dinosaur. Anyway, I have to use my hand in here, and I'm just going to scrunch it in, and I'm going to start pushing the soil backwards. And I like to use the back of the spoon, and I chose this one because it's a little bit skinnier. And I'm just going to push it in so that we get soil all the way around. Yeah, we check our work. And there, we have planted our first plant. I think it's going to look really good. Now, the next thing is that, of course, because I pushed all the soil I added in, I have to put in a bit more. So, using my scoop and my spoon, I'm just going to... This is a very messy job. I would suggest you put a cover on your kitchen table. Or if you're going to work outside, that would be even better. So now I want to fit in my moon valley. So sometimes when you go to take small plants out, you find that they've already grown quite a large, extensive root system. So rather than just rip at it and rip the plant apart, I squeeze the pot and I loosen it up as much as I can. And I take the end of my little teaspoon and I just give it a bit of a push, and it should just gently come out, root ball and all, but you're going to hold it by the soil and you just keep squeezing. And I got all the roots almost. So that's really good. See, I've got nice loose roots now. I don't have to tickle it too much. And then I have to get it in and I have to get it upright. Now the trick is that these leaves are quite large, so I might have to go in leaf first, because I tried the other way. See, it worked better going in leaf first. So now we have a 2-plant terrarium, and we just need to add some soil and give it a good, and I rock it at this point so that I can get more soil in. And there, I have it looking really nice. Now here's what your paintbrush is for. You're going to sweep the rim of the pot of your terrarium. Now comes the really fun part. You get to put all your decorations in. I found a couple of chunks of bark out in the mulch, and they're not too bad. So I'm going to try and just put one in, and I'm going to poke it well down in the soil. I did pick up some pieces of wood that I had been slicing into slices, but I think these are too big. However, I am sure that at home you have found a marble or some really neat glass, and they just make such a pretty color accent in here. So I like to just tuck them in and give them a little bit of a space. Now, the trick is, how do I get more in there? So this is where you use your spoon, and you take your spoon like the front end loader, and you put a spoon, you put a rock there, you take in another couple of pieces of glass, and you use your spoon. You have to get really good with this. And if you don't like what you're doing with them, you just take your chopstick and you just push them down, and see, you've sort of landscaped the front, you've made it kind of pretty. I'm going to put another, I think it needs another orange one back there, so I'm going to put it back there, I'm going to push it in, and I just want another sparkly bit right there, so I'm going to do a little pile, and I found a really pretty rock in the backyard. So we kind of made a little landscape. And again, just give it a good cleanup. I'm looking at the back here and I'm thinking, I think it looks really good. So then you put your lid on and you just fasten it shut. It's going to steam up. It's going to get like a jungle. And that is part of the deal. So, and after 24 hours, after one full day, just take the lid off and just set it beside it and let it breathe. And that'll give it, during the daytime, it'll give it the extra bit of oxygen, and then it will go that way. And if you want, if your house is really dry, I would put the lid on, but I'd poke some holes in the lid. And I would just take a skewer and make a couple of holes, and then it can breathe at night, but it'll also trap the moisture, which is what the plant needs. Now, if it gets too dry, don't pour water heavily into it. Just take the watering can and tip it up slightly and just pour it into the bottom. And that'll give it lots of water and lots of care. It would make a great gift for someone, but it will be fun to watch it grow. It's going to outgrow this, not easily, but fast. So you might have to pull them out in about 6 months and put them in pots. But great way to keep these little ferns in there because they like the moisture. This Moon Valley will sprawl out and start to cover the ground, and it'll just give you just that pretty little look to your container, and I bet you your mom will like it too.